Wouldn't you love to know how to create, grow, and preserve your wealth? Well, you are now in the right place. They are the masters of this game. Let's listen into the movers and shakers in the wealth game.
Welcome back to another episode of the VM Wealthwise podcast. Now, one of the lessons we've learned about wealth and managing our finances is that knowledge is indeed everything. Now, guys, think about it. If you did not have the financial knowledge you have today, how different would your life be? Now, what better way to emphasize the power of financial freedom than to introduce to you one of our favorite mavens right here in Jamaica? Our special guest today is the embodiment of the words, with financial wisdom comes financial freedom. You're feeling it, right? But before we get into it, as a reminder, you can find us on vmwealthwise.buzzsprout.com as well as the VM Wealth YouTube channel. And while you're at it, just jump on over to our LinkedIn page at VM Wealth Management. Now, it's time to share with us some of her financial knowledge and experiences. I have a very special guest. Her name is Odetta Rockhead-Kerr, and she is the founder and the CEO of GoFa. Odetta, welcome to the Wealthwise podcast. Thank you for just joining us. Wow, you looking lovely, girl.
Thank you, my dear. And right back at you, my sister.
Ooh, I'm feeling it. So you ready?
I
Ready
am.
to talk about money and your journey and, your growth in the industry, and just share with all of us, who Odetta is and what Odetta is all about.
I will do my best.
So I heard a song recently by dancehall artist Movado and this rapper Future and Acewood. And the song is about, progression. And he says, I ain't going back broke. Now, what do those words mean to you? I ain't going back broke.
Well, broke means different things to different people, right? And for me, being broke is a temporary state. Now, I don't fear being broke because when you have mastered the art to create wealth, you can do it 3, 4, or 5 times. So being broke is no longer a fear. Also, if when you are broke, you are happy, then you don't feel that brokenness or that mindset or that frame of mind is something that you're going to avoid. Quite frankly, even after I earned my first million, I was broke twice and had to start over again. So I don't view broke in the same way most people did, because when I was broke, when I had nothing, gratitude made me feel like I had enough. So I was still happy. But at the same time, I know the difference between being broke and having money. And I prefer the latter for obvious reasons. But I also know that I can recreate wealth if I needed to, because it's a system. And as long as you master it, you don't fear broke. And what I'd say to them is the state that you fear is the one that you usually end up in. Stop fearing it and just treat it as a step in your forward progress, and it will be fine.
Absolutely. And there are different types of broke.
True.
Yes,
True.
because you can just buy a house and
That's
you're
exactly
cash
what
broke,
happened.
but you're asset rich,
You are correct.
And you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about gratitude. Now, being broke without money is one thing, but being happy and content is another. And I just love the fact that we have to include gratitude in our day-to-day, in our overall lives, in our experiences, because without gratitude, then we'll just have no hope.
Correct.
And I'm loving this conversation already. I'm feeling so close to it. So you've never been afraid to share your story, especially the aspects that involved you in being less fortunate. And growing up, you didn't know your family was struggling to make ends meet. How were you able to like identify with that? Were you ever schooled by your parents and your guardians about money and stuff like that?
So I'll take the last question first. No, I think the greatest advice I got from my guardians, my mother, and I lived with an extended family,
Yeah.
is make sure you buy a house before you buy a car because you can't live in your car. That's as far as the financial advice.
That's a real gem right there. Buy a house before you buy a car because you can't live in your car.
Correct. So that's as far as it went from a financial advice perspective. But you're right. I was not aware that I was poor because poverty is really a state of mind. And when I was growing up in the rural St. James, everybody around me had an outdoor pit toilet, had a zinc shed that was a bathroom. We had an outdoor kitchen. Our board houses were falling apart. I mean, in my book, I share photos of our flooring board, which was rotten because of, just us not having the ability to fix it. And it was an old house that was deteriorating over time. But when you look at your neighbor, you see the same thing. You walk around the road, Mass George living at the same kind of house. So it has to be the norm, right? But then now I go to school, which I walk 30 minutes to go to Springfield All-Age School, and they have a big pit toilet, a grand pit toilet. So how do you associate or conclude that you're poor when everybody around you is living the same? You don't know. When I realized I was poor was when I was one of the few students who passed common entrance to go to Mount Alvernia High School in Montego Bay. And I saw the girls being dropped off and being chauffeur driven. Yes. And when summer come back and I swim in a river and pond and come back and they're showing me pictures of their trips to Milan. And I'm like, oh, what is and their houses and their indoor plumbing. That's when I realized that indoor plumbing was actually the norm because I thought my pit toilet was it, right? So for me, it took an external force or experience to make me realize I was poor. And I think that's because even though I was so poor, we were happy. So happiness is an amazing thing. You don't feel it. I guess if things weren't good in our household and we were always sad, the burden of that would allow me to internalize poverty. But that wasn't the case. I was very happy and very poor.
But you didn't recognize it until later down.
No.
So it didn't really impact you mentally as much because of, the contentment and the happiness.
You're correct.
At what point, though, did you decide that, Odetta, we have to improve our finances?
I had several, I'm going to call them awakening, right? The first one happened when I was about probably between 8 and 10 years old. And I asked my family for something. I think it was a watch or something like that I saw. And they said they couldn't afford it. And I said to my grandmother, all right, I want the watch, so I'm going to get it. So she loved baking. So I said to her, let's bake a cake together and put some icing on it. And I took my, those double line exercise book. You're probably not old enough to know those. With the hummingbird on the outside, right?
Of course, I know it. I'm not that old, guys. I'm not that old.
I took my exercise book, and my grandmother worked as a domestic helper. So she would get a lot of hand-me-down crayons and markers. So I took those and I made raffle tickets. And I walked the community and sold everybody a raffle ticket to win the cake and sell them at school as well. Now, this wasn't approved by the betting gaming and lotteries commission.
Please don't compare.
But I raffled the cake and I made a tidy sum. And that started my little loan business and my little I used to tape Tom and Jerry cartoons.
At 10 years old?
10 years old.
Wow.
So that was the first time I kind of said, if they can't give it to me, I have to find a way to give it to myself. But there were two other things that made me say, I will not and cannot be poor. The second one was during Hurricane Gilbert. Our house was so worn by that time that we were certain we were going to lose our roof. And I swear it's my grandmother's prayers that kept it on. But we were there setting pots and pans trying to catch water. And when the wind got very bad, we hovered into a corner. And I said to myself at that time, God, I'm going to tear down this old board house and build a nice big concrete house. Because, we all have the concrete house aspirations for my family when I get older. Now, this is a whole extended family of 8 rooms. I'm going to say everybody going to have their own room. We're going to have 2 hall, 2 veranda. And I envisioned it in that moment. And I'll tell you how that went later on. The last one is I was actually pregnant twice before I was 17 years old, as I shared in my book. And I had my son, and I made the decision to bring this child into the world prematurely. I had a responsibility to take care of him. And I said, I'm not going to rely on any handouts. I'm going to do this myself. And that's when I said, all right, what do I need to do? I need to go back to school. I need to get my career on the way. So that, I would say those are the 3 moments that made me realize that I wasn't supposed to be or remain in the situation that I had. And they were very good wise. A home for my family and taking care of my son. You couldn't want it better than that. So it created great inspiration for me.
Absolutely. And I hear you talk about your grandma and, her influence. Who taught you how to save? Was it her?
Who taught me how to
save?
You know what? Yes. But it's my uncles who took the old Milo tin and cut the little hole in the top to make the saving pan, because we couldn't afford a piggy bank.
Yeah.
But we had our own homemade saving pan. But I think everybody in our family realized that we needed to save. And our savings was to go to Grand Market night, Christmas Eve, because if we didn't have enough money saved, we couldn't get to go.
Right.
So that was a big motivation. So I think it was the entire family that chipped in on that.
And then now later on, who taught you how to invest?
Well, so I went to college. When I dropped out and go back the second time, a girlfriend of mine was an investment. She ended up in banking, and she did a lot of investment banking. And we all started to read a lot of books and started to listen, anything we could listen to or watch that was about making money and how to make money. So a lot of it, I would say, was self-taught. And then her being in banking, she was able to share with us the tools that we can use to achieve this. So I don't think anybody taught me. I think that's where it came from.
I like how you didn't just stop at saving in a piggy bank and, taking the advice from your uncles, but saying, you know what, I have to push a little further. So when I decided to go to school and link up with my old friends and so on, and you didn't stop there, you sought after the information. Financial education is a big thing. And a lot of the times we rely on our own understanding of what we think investments are and, what we can acquire and all the assets and all the money, but we don't really understand. But I'm glad that you have persons in your life that you can rely on to take it a little further, because sometimes we want good for ourselves, we want good for our families, but we need to ensure that we leverage our circle or network and to help us to build and to grow. Right?
Agreed 100%.
So I'm going deeper into your business now, Odetta. How old were you when you made your first million?
I know it was before age 25, because that house that I talked about in Hurricane Gilbert, it was done by my 25th birthday. And it was a 6,000 square feet, 9-bedroom house that took many, many millions. And we moved in at my 25th year of life. So if I were to guess, I would say I started to make a US 6-figure compensation package in about 23. So it's somewhere between 23 and 25.
You work hard for the money.
Yeah, Jesus, you don't understand.
That is absolutely impressive. So what age would you say that you became financially free?
I don't know if I can say I'm financially free. I prefer to use the term financially independent. And I'll tell you how I perceive financial freedom versus financial independence. Financial independence to me is where I'm at right now, because I could have walked away from my 9-to-5. I earn enough money passively to be able to sustain myself, cover wants and needs, not just needs, and to live a good life, the life that I dreamt of as a child. Financial freedom is now when I can snooze every day if I don't want to come out of bed for the rest of my life and know that not me, because I can do that today, but my next generation is provided for financially. So financial freedom for me is not so much about a number. It's about being able to create a system that can be repeated for many generations. Yes, generational wealth is how I see. Because I don't believe if I'm financially free and my next generation is suffering, my financial freedom would have been in vain.
Or it would have just been limited to you.
That's correct.
And it dies with you.
That's correct, which means that I'm leaving the world probably just as how I came into it.
In your opinion, though, do you think you can ever garner too much wealth?
I try not to judge because wealth means different things to different people. For me, wealth is not a number. Wealth is a state. So when I'm not the yacht and the jet person.
Hold on there, Odetta. You have to repeat that, Jim, because we're here for it.
I don't remember what I just said. What did I say?
Wealth is not a number.
Oh,
wealth is a state.
Okay.
A state of mind, a state of being.
Yes, you are correct.
Listen, I'm just loving it over here.
So when you view wealth that way, so for me, if I describe what wealth looks like for me, again, I can do the things that I absolutely love, cover my needs, continue to help my family, and provide for my next generation. I don't need to own a yacht, a jet, but to another person, that may be their definition of wealth. So I'm not going to chase after money because I'm more about peace of mind. And I set up every single thing in my life around preserving my peace of mind because my happiness comes first. And because of that, I can't be out there in perpetuity chasing after more money, because then when will I enjoy it?
2022, they say we chase after the bag. But you keep chasing and chasing, but when do you take a break to enjoy?
And there's never such a thing as too much money. Mm-hmm. People will chase in perpetuity.
I agree. So what would you say has been one of your smartest financial or business decision to date?
All right, let me single out one. I would say real estate, acquiring properties. That there's a particular property that when I looked at it, nobody else wanted it because it was so different and it wasn't complete. And being able to see the vision of what that property could be, we decided to go ahead and purchase the property. And at the time, it was about 40 million Jamaican dollars. And in less than 5 years, it was valued at $1.5 million. Yes. And by now, it should be probably closer to $2 million. So,
US dollars, guys.
Yes, US dollars. Sorry. I went from Jamaica to US dollars.
Right.
Yes, it's US dollars. So to me, that being able to have foresight and to see things that a lot of people don't see and to have faith and know that, my dreams will mature and invest accordingly, which is what I did in that case.
Impressive.
Thank you.
So you just given us what you believe to be your smartest financial decision, but what would you say would be your most regrettable?
Very easy. I'll tell you why. Because I just jot down some bullet points for my next YouTube video, and it's the 3 stupidest mistakes I made in my 20s.
Yeah,
so this is the first one.
You need to share.
I'll tell you. I just want to give you all the details. But when I was I was probably 22, and one of the things that was happening to me is when you grow so fast, and this was a US-based Fortune 500 company, where when I walk into a room to pitch a client, it's all Caucasian, upstate New York, California type people that I'm walking in to talk to. And when they look at you, all they see is youthful exuberance, right?
Right.
And when you perceive youth, usually you don't see substance. So I wanted to look a little bit mature, and even locally, when I would give a presentation on behalf of my staff, people just wouldn't take me seriously because I looked like a child at age 22 and I had a youthful look. So I did two things. I chopped off my hair and started to wear more makeup and tried to look a little bit older. I started to dress like I owned the company, not like I worked there. But the second thing I did was I bought the biggest SUV I could buy at the time.
Boss moves.
Correct. And this SUV, I was paying probably 180,000. This is almost 20 years. I'm now 46. So you know how long ago was that? I can't remember if it was 100 or 18,000, but it was about a third of my total salary, which made absolutely no sense. But I wanted to make an impression. And quite frankly, I believe it played a role in me getting promoted to a vice president in the Fortune 500 company by age 25. But I also think that I could have used a cheaper approach, because with that money that I had taken, and the fact that I kept that loan, I paid the loan off very quickly, but I kept that vehicle for about 5 years. If I had taken that amount per month and invested it in a mutual fund that paid 7 or 8%, by the time I was done, I would be able to buy 3 houses over Bogue Village instead of the vehicle that had no value after
preach,
7 years.
Preach, Odetta, preach. No, because a lot of young people are, focused on impressions and keeping up with the Joneses and trying to impress people, and boy, that is not it.
But we all were there. All of us have to go through learnings. The key is to learn quickly.
And that is why we're having this conversation, so we can also educate and share our experiences with, this generation to say, hey,
we have to change
make smart decisions.
Yes. It's not about the hype,
I hear you talk about the car and the loan. So tell me how you handle debt.
So when I was younger, I did not believe in debt because of how I was raised, right? My grandmother always said that if the bank owes it or owns it, they can take it away from you, which is why the first house, I made sure, I had to hustle, but I made sure we didn't take any loans. It was built out of savings. And even the Surf, the vehicle that I had bought, I made sure I paid it off very quickly because loans didn't give me peace of mind. I felt like if something were to go wrong, I could lose whatever it is that I have. But debt is necessary. It's how you use it that determines if you stay poor or if you get rich. I encourage people to use debt to do 3 things. 1, to invest in properties and assets or portfolio incomes that appreciate over time. 2, to start a business, use people money, no matter use your own. And 3, if the thing you're buying is something that you can sell back after a period of time, or if it's something that is going to improve your net worth, then by all means use debt to buy it. Outside of that, it should be avoided at all costs. So when we get to our 20s and we say, oh, we have to have the car because we're in the job now, it's believe me, every single time it's a better decision to take that same $500 car payment and take out an apartment and rent it and use the money that's coming from the apartment to pay for the car, because your assets should pay for your liabilities.
Listen, I hope you guys are taking notes. You've heard it from the Maven herself. All of those tips, I'm sure I have to listen. I will definitely take that one about investing in the income securities and the mutual funds and the unit trust and the stock market, because I got to tell you, VM Wealth Management, it's where it's at. And that's the type of products and services that we offer. And so financial education and literacy is very big. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because those are some of the vehicles and tools that we use to help our clients to grow and to build their wealth.
And I can confirm that because I also am a client of VM Wealth.
Hey, girl. So you mentioned earlier about your son. As a parent, do you ensure that he has a basic understanding of the financial struggles that you've gone through, and the importance of saving and investing early?
It was so important because how can he appreciate it if he has not experienced it, right? So I would take him to where I grew up and made sure that even though, we were living in a nicer house, because when I built that house, I built it exactly where I grew up, not down the board house, built the house right in that same spot.
Foundation.
And so I would take him there and he would, interact with everybody. He would go to the river like I used to and swim, go to the bush and shoot bird and pick mangoes. So I wanted him to have that experience because my son's paternal side of the family, they're lawyers and doctors and nurses. So he wouldn't have gotten that experience otherwise. So I wanted him to understand that because what it does, it gives you a baseline and it helps you to be a lot more grateful for what you have when you see that everybody's not living the same way that you are. So that was very important to me. And I started his financial literacy very, very early. For example, when he was doing GSAT, leading up to GSAT, I had him on an incentive-based compensation plan where for every A, he got $5. For every B, and this is an exam, for every B, he got $3. For a C, he got $1. And for a D, and I wrote about this in my book, which is why it's so fluid in my head. But for a D, he would not get any money and I would take away his video games or whatever he was enjoying at the time. So he understood the importance of working hard and achieving something and being rewarded for effort from a very early age. So I believe my son is very humble. And he does, right now, he's not in the best of health. And I always say he has to tell his own story when he gets out of the situation. But he's one of the humblest 20-odd-year-olds you'll come across. And I think it's because he's so grounded in what it looks like to not have anything and what it looks like to have something. Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, wife, mother, how would you categorize the importance of a strong support system?
I think it can make or break you. And I'll tell you exactly why. You imagine me at 17 being pregnant twice and then having a child. When you don't have a strong support system around you as a young woman, you know what happens? After you have that child, sometimes the man moves on. In my case, thank God he didn't, but sometimes they move on. And then you're suffering or struggling, I should say, to provide for that child. So you go and look for another man. Somehow we like as men, or I shouldn't say we, sometimes I feel like I'm a man, but sometimes the men say, okay, I'm the new man in your life. I want me pitney too. So this is the second pregnancy. It doesn't work out and move on. And then the third one come and say, I have to stamp my mark. I want a pitney too. So now you at 3. And that's why I don't judge, because you don't know people's circumstances. Now you have 3 children with probably 4 different men, because the last one maybe for 2 fathers. You never know who is the real father is because of the situation.
Right.
And that is really what happens to most teenage mothers, because they can't provide for themselves and the child. So they keep looking for help to do so. I had my son's father's family and his mother, or my son's grandmother. After I got pregnant, she was working overseas, and shortly afterwards, she decided she was going to come home to take care of her grandchild. And that was the only reason why I could be on a plane every single week going, because I was in charge of Africa, several states in the US, Mexico, India, several places worldwide that I would have to travel to. And if I didn't know that my son was being cared for by her and my side of the family, I wouldn't have felt comfortable leaving him as much as I did. So the support system will make or break you.
I absolutely agree. So, how do you approach your needs versus your wants, as you go along your journey of building wealth?
So in my young stages, and I'm going to say between ages 0 and 30, I didn't even make room for wants. And I'll give you an example. The day when that house was done, that was the first time I was broke. right? Had saved up all this money and just had to be scrimmaging at the last stages to the point where we couldn't furnish the house. When it was just done, we basically slept on the floor. But you know what? We had a roof over our heads. And when we went to courts, never forget this moment, we were there trying to get furniture on hire purchase. And I was upstairs and my aunt and my mother was downstairs. And I was walking down the stairs. The heel of my shoes fell off and rolled down the stairs. And I went down there and I picked it up with pride. You know why? Because that heel fell off because I did not buy any clothing and shoes for the last 5 years, even though I was making a US 6-figure salary. I made what I had work. I ate ramen noodles, like how the Chinese them eat it all the time, because I was saving I didn't have any room for needs. And that's what I encourage people to do. I'm not saying to make too many sacrifices that are not sustainable. But when you're on the path to achieve wealth, you need a budget. And you need to, people talk about saving 15%. 15% of your income saved will give you an average life. 50% will give you an extraordinary life. And that was my objective from I was making minimum wage. So as I got older, and I made more money, I was able to slip in a few wants. And today I have a good balance, but I still save 50% of my income. So what I would say is when you're on the path and you're aggressively pursuing that journey, there's very little room to splurge on your wants. But realize this, when they're out partying and you're working, and when they're going on the trips and you're investing, you are going to have the last laugh when you reach your 30s and your 40s, and they're scrimmaging.
Listen, you are absolutely accurate about just wanting more for yourself, but the life that you envision in your future, you have to focus on in the now.
Yes.
And many persons may not be able to save half of their salaries, but they can possibly do it in increments as over the years, as their salary increases, as they get the promotions and they grow into their careers, because, you know, we have the pension investing and so on. And everybody should ensure once you're employed, you need to talk to a pension advisor. And by the way, we have that here at VM Group. We have VM Pensions Management. So that is something very important, to not only think about the now, but to think about the future. Because honestly, like you, if my shoes fell off, I would have felt embarrassed. But because you know the why.
Yes.
Why my shoes, my heel fell off in public. I just bought a house, or I just built my house. I have somewhere to live. And that's an amazing feeling. And I'm sure a lot of homeowners would have that same experience when you just buy a property, you really can't buy the furniture at the same time. But you are so content with just owning something, and you know, you feel proud. Your parents may not have owned houses before, or owned a house, and maybe you're the first person in your family to do that. And so that's a major accomplishment. And I'm absolutely happy that, you know, you would have experienced that. And I would want for all of us to aspire, if we're coming up in humble beginnings, to aspire to be in a place in the future where we are most happy, where we can provide for ourselves and our families.
Agree. Do you mind if I follow up on that?
Sure.
So to your point, we often get caught up, however, with lifestyle inflation. So you put aside the goal to save or invest the 10%, which is good because we can't all start at 50. But as soon as we start making more money, we want to move into the more affluent community. We want to change our hairdresser to the one in the more affluent place. We start spending more on certain things. And that subscription that we make to inflating our lifestyle along with our income ends up in a situation where we're spending more than we're earning, or we're not able to put aside enough. So one of the things I would want everybody to hear is lifestyle inflation is trendy, but it will not get you anywhere.
It won't get you anywhere, but there's a actual principle that will help to guide when you actually get your salary, and it's called paying yourself first.
Yes,
When you
true.
pay yourself first, then you won't have any time to be trying to impress anybody
Yes.
with those lifestyle subscriptions, because that money done gone in savings.
Good point.
Right.
Good point.
And so you splurge on anything?
I do actually. Listen, every January 1st, this is most of my splurging money comes from my NHD returns. And that is proper money. We're talking about almost $1 million Jamaican dollars.
Yes, girl.
Every January 1st, when I get it, you know where I head? Straight to the plant shop. No, let me clarify that. When I was younger, I love handbags. I love good handbags. Why? Because when I was in my 20s, I went through a period where I wanted every handbag to match every shoe. And each shoe was about $20 and each handbag was probably $25, and they never last. Proper hot girl. But they never lasted. And I spent so much money following up on that habit. And when I got to the point where I said, I'm going to buy things that can last my lifetime, I decided to invest in handbags and a few good pair of shoes. So I did that. I could say I splurged on that when I was younger. But today, it's all about my garden. So nothing sweet like I get a nice amount of what I call free money. Free money is like if an investment turnover more than I anticipated, like the NHT returns, or I get a gig like, where I go speak or something, I head straight to the plant store. And I'm buying plants. I also love koi. So I'm buying the fish and the plants, and a koi can run you as much as 50,000 Jamaican dollars.
Right.
So that's where I'm in my garden and I'm planting, and that's where I'm most grounded. And I'm a homebody. So that's what I splurge on these days, believe it or not.
You splurge on your comfort for your home,
Yes,
and it
yes.
helps to balance you and your happiness. And, the thing is, you worked hard for it. You work hard to get to that place, where you can experience what you called just now free money. That you can, do a little splurging, and that doesn't hurt anybody at all.
No, I agree.
Really,
and if I was the kind that loved the yacht and splurge on it, you don't judge. Different people like different things,
Absolutely.
To each their own.
To each their own. I heard you speak of your book. Tell us how we can support your business and learn more about Odetta Rockhead-Kerr.
Okay. So my book is called No Regrets, Just Lessons. And it's exactly that. I've had a lot of turmoil, difficulty, and challenges in my life. And some of them were self-inflicted. But what I want everyone to realize is that no matter where you're coming from, who you are, and what your circumstances are, it does not have to define who you become. And that's embodied in that book. So it's a self-help book, but it's also a memoir of the most intimate moments of my life. And it is sold locally. It's sold in Fontana or at several bookstores. But the best price is on our website, which is goffaglobal.com, or we have a gallery. It's a store, but we call it our Goffa Gallery. And it's at Southdale Plaza. And for those who know where Susie's is, it's right upstairs Susie's. And you can get the book there to buy or on the website. We deliver internationally. And it's also sold on Amazon. It exists in every format. So it's in hardcover, paperback, ebook, and audiobook. And you can get 3 of those on Amazon and the rest on Goffa. Goffa now is our e-commerce platform, Goffa Global. And Goffa is now the passion that I make in my paycheck. And it's my way of fulfilling purpose. Because I was born poor, I wanted to create a platform that gave everybody, no matter where they came from, who they are, the ability to earn without discriminating. So, in my professional life, you needed subjects and degrees and all of that. And certain people don't have that. You also have people with disabilities. But on our platform, because it's a space where you can basically search the platform for products, if you see something and you like it and you know somebody who will like it, you can send them a link. And let's say it's this sofa that I'm sitting in and it's being sold for $1,000. You send them a link of the sofa. You make about, I think it's about 40 or 50 US dollars from just sharing a link when they make a purchase. You make as much as that. And everything is on there, from cement to books to furniture. And we have 9 partner locations that ship globally. We have one in Florida that ship to the rest of the world. But more importantly, it's such a great thing to watch when people can just take a link or send somebody their unique ID, which we call their grid, which is their Gopher referral ID. And when people buy the product like you would on Amazon, it works the same way. Now you are making money. So if you have a visual impediment, for example, you can always send a link, or you can share it with someone and you can still earn. So there's no limitation. It's free for folks to enter. We have some people who come in as club members, the same way you have Amazon Prime or PriceSmart Platinum, but it's free for everyone and you start earning immediately. So I also have a YouTube channel that I started recently because I do coach and I don't mentor, I mostly coach. And I realized that 1, everybody couldn't afford to pay for the coaching. And 2, I wasn't reaching enough people. So I said, you know what, let me just do a YouTube channel and talk about financial literacy, talk about growth and development, talk about how to stop living or stop aspiring to live an average life and make exceptional your new normal. And that's what I'm doing on the channel.
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it.
Thank
Odetta,
you.
thank you so much for being my special guest today on the Wealthwise podcast. Listen, this conversation was wealthy. And I'm just looking forward to reading your book and checking out your YouTube videos.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And I hope folks can learn from what we have exchanged today, because then I would have achieved my purpose, and I'm sure yours.
Absolutely. Tune in next week. And remember, for all your wealth management needs, call us at 876-960-5000 or email us at wealthinfo@myvmgroup.com. Podcast production courtesy of Infinity Media. Don't forget, you can build your wealth with us at VM Wealth Management. Advice, solutions, performance.